Hey, I'd like to just have a quick little check-in for my video for today on Don Quixote, which I'm slowly reading into the second part. This is from chapter 3, where Don Quixote and Sancho Panza are talking with this bachelor fellow, Samson apparently, about the first part of Don Quixote that's been published, and about this guy who's written all these things about me, and it's like it turns out it's a translation of a Moorish author, and the author, they obviously always lie, but just also the book has come in for criticism, and yeah, the and it's like, what do they say? It's like, um, is that the reason, Don Quixote says, but it often happens that those who have deservedly won and achieved great fame because of their writings lose their fame or saw it diminished when they had their words printed. It's like you get better, which is a rather paradoxical statement to say, like, well, your writing's great until it's printed and we can all read it, and then it's terrible. We get all this criticism for it. I mean, I guess it's the more widely dispersed, the more you're liable to attract critics. And Samson says the reason for that, said Samson, is that since printed words are looked at slowly, their faults are easily seen, and the greater the fame their authors, the more closely they are scrutinized. Men who are famous for their talents, great poets, eminent historians, are always, or almost always, envied by those whose particular pleasure and entertainment is judging other people's writing without ever having brought anything of their own into the light of day. Which is like, ow. Don Quixote is dissing BookTube from the early 1600s, and there's a thing here of as Don Quixote says, like, yeah, there's many theologians who are not good at the pulpit, but are excellent at recognizing the lack or excuses of excesses of those who preach. Again, those who can't criticize those who can, which it would make a very tiny. And like, the thing is with critics, I always think of critics as actually that's readers, and all readers are on one level critics. All readers have to make judgments of whether they're enjoying something or not, or else they're just kind of dumb vessels that everything just sort of passes through, and no writer wants that. They always want people to be moved, but the only way you're going to be moved is if if it engages you. And sometimes it's going to engage you positively, and you're going to love it, and you're going to be swept away in it. But there's sometimes it's just not going to engage you, and there's a good questioning to be there. It's like, I think all readers are critics, is something I wish would be a thing that authors would realize. Is like, everybody who's going to encounter your work, who's truly going to encounter your work, and not just going to have it on in the background and not even listen to it, which is going to be the greatest insult for somebody who's put so much work into something. People who are going to actually read it are going to be people who are they are critics. And it's, though they said, and all this is true, Senior Don Quixote said, Samson Carrasco, but I should like those censors to be more merciful and less severe, not pay so much attention to the motes in the bright sun of the work they criticize. For if Algundo bonus domat Homer, which is from Horace, which is from time to time even Homer nods, they should consider how often he was awake to give brilliant light to his work with the least amount of shadow possible. And it well may be that what seems like defects to them are birthmarks that often increase the beauty of the face where they appear. And so I say that whomever prints a book exposes himself to great danger, since it is utterly impossible to write in a way that will satisfy and please everyone who reads it. Which is like, there's some fascinating stuff in there. It's like that, if a work is too perfect, it doesn't, it's like the most beautiful face in the world, the most perfect. It's just like, it's a plane that you would skip off of. But you think of like some French mademoiselle with a birthmark. That birthmark there just makes the perfection all the more beautiful. And that's something to say in a work of art. There's sometimes you do get critics who are like, oh, but there's only one flaw in this thing, and it's just like you do wonder if like there was no flaws in this, then there would be nowhere to kind of hook on, nowhere to grasp. Uh, and indeed, is it a flaw or is it an accent? And Also, just yeah, the thing of whenever you write, you're always going to displease somebody. You have to have an attitude. You have to take a stand, and not everyone is going to like that stand. And indeed, it might be so unpopular to stand that majority of people won't like it at this point. And then time can come around and people will like it. And then time can come around again and it'll fall back out of favor again. You think about that with kind of the great works of literature is there definitely is these cycles, even for the stuff that lasts around. Like, Shakespeare wasn't always hot shit. Sometimes he was like seen as kind of the country bumpkin, kind of like, gross, like, you think about the kind of very kind of classical stuff period that we had. Shakespeare was not seen as somebody who was neat and tidy, and now of course we've gotten out of the whole neat and tidy thing and we're more into Shakespeare is very popular, maybe too popular, so becomes the people's Shakespeare, which falls out of favor with the critics to degrees or others. So yeah, there's that stuff. And Oh, and okay. I also wanted to kind of note this because in this section we've gotten Cervantes is obviously has been reading his reviews. There's criticisms over The Man with the Reckless Imagination, the whole story about Lothario, and how this seems to a lot of readers to be like, it's a fine novella on its own, but what the hell does it have to do with the rest of the story? And we want to get back to Don Quixote and Sancho Panza, so we have that criticism. There's also a little thing in here about how they fault the author's the failure in the author's memory because he forgets to tell who the thief was who stole Sancho's donkey, for it's never stated and can only be inferred from the writing that it was stolen. And soon after that, we see Sancho riding that very same donkey and don't know how it reappears. So there was continuity geeks. Even there's IMDb even back in the day where people were like, "Hey, wait a minute." There's continuity errors in your work. It's like, one of the things I think. Yeah, Sancho replies, "I, Senor Sanson, in no condition to give accounts or accountings. My stomach is now beginning to flag, and if I don't restore it with a couple of swallows of mellow wine, I'll be nothing but skin and bone. I'll keep some at home, and my missus is waiting for me. When I finish eating, I'll come back and satisfy your grace and anybody else who wants to ask questions about how the loss of my donkey or the 100 escudados," because there's also a question of like, there's money and we never got settled, like what happened to this money? And Sancho's like, "Oh, I'll tell you in the next chapter." Which is I'm sure so the author's like, "I made this up, it's not that important, yeah, and I'll make it up, I'll make something up, come back in a little bit." So yeah, that is chapter 3, Don Quixote talking to Sanson Carrasco. Yeah, pages 479 and 480. I just love the kind of the things of like the critic, the idea of critic, reader as critic, and all readers are critics. So that's something I should talk about at some point. But yeah, okay, that's my little ramble on Don Quixote for today. More videos later.